I didn't think so, but it was sure irritating at the end. It was an end for a long time.
So, I have to open up I'll open up to the audience in just a moment, but I have to ask you, Marilyn, how are your vocal cords after all that screaming? Like, did you have to get
Absolutely
any
not.
herbal teas or anything?
They were never better. My only revenge in the whole movie was to scream. And when they yelled cut, to keep screaming, to let everybody know how much I was enjoying the filming of the movie. So I made sure my voice was always well, and never did lose it. And I'm proud to say I think it was it had a good voice in the movie.
I find interesting about the film is that if you look at today's modern horror films, it's seemingly all about throwing blood at the screen. Considering the fact that this film was banned in multiple countries globally at the time, it's interesting that, there's blood on the apron, there's blood on the walls, but there's no gore. And it's all psychological horror. You know the meat hook's going into Pam's back. You don't see the penetration, but that's what makes it more psychologically horrific. Do you think, I guess I'll pose this to you, Terry, do you think today's modern films, horror films in this genre, are they being made in that, the same way that, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was made, where it's more psychological horror?
No, they're much more graphic today. I was just saying to somebody that came up, I can't even go to see the Saw movie. It's really hard for me. I enjoy the psychological thriller more, and I think that's what it does. I think I looked and there, as far as blood in my scene, if there's maybe a second and a half or 2 seconds of you seeing the bucket below me, and then it pans up. And I think it's like 2 seconds,
Yeah.
and that's all you see. And you don't see blood anywhere else in my scenes. And you don't even see it in Bill when he's cutting him up in front of me. You don't see him. And I think the only time I remember it is at the end with Marilyn, when you're covered in blood. And then with Paul, I think that there's a point when you get Paul, just for a second.
No, they split it on his eight.
But
You never see it Paul. It's always just little. Marilyn, Dottie Pearl, the makeup woman, was sitting on the left of Paul Franklin, and Toby Hooper was on the right, just crouched down, and they each had a little plastic cup with blood in it, and they were doing this. And then finally at the end, Toby takes what's left in his cup and goes like this, so that if you watch, there's just one little splooge of blood that hits, and that's Toby. No, you don't see anything. The only thing that's explicit in the movie is when Leatherface gets hit in the leg, and you see that steak. It's actually a steak. I wanted to take it home and cook it. No, they taped a piece of sheet metal on my leg, and then they taped down a steak and then a blood bag. So that's the only time you see anything at all.
And when we were discussing when we picked you up at the airport, you were mentioning that
TCM in a lot of ways has paved the way for people like Rob Zombie and Eli Roth to exist in these Saw movies that are torture porn, so to speak. Would you consider TCM to be sort of the pioneering film that paved the way for those kind of films?
Okay. I do, because I think that where it paves the way for torture porn is the dinner scene.
Yeah.
Because Sally is so brutalized in that scene that I think that's what sets up the whole idea of torture porn. But it's not graphic. I mean, it's called the mother of all splatter movies, and there's no splatter in the movie.
Exactly.
So it has a lot to answer for that it can do. Or it's called upon to answer for something to do. But I really do feel, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, I really do feel like it's a legitimate thing to see it as a precursor to torture. I do want to add, by the way, talking about splatter, when I saw Saw, there's a moment in Saw which is wonderful, because when he's cutting his foot off, I mean, there's some things in that movie that are just, but that are just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like the guy's lying there for 2 days and he never figures out that he's dead, that he's not dead.
Right.
But there was this moment when I'm watching and he's cutting his foot off, and I thought, we're not seeing it. You never see him cut his foot off. And I thought this was like the one thing in that movie that it was like Chainsaw Massacre. I was sitting there going, oh my God, he's cutting his foot off. Look at that, look at that. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. And I thought that was something that,
Yeah.
that it owed that to Chainsaw, and I think it was a smart lesson in that movie.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, before Jason Voorhees, before Michael Myers, before Freddy Krueger, there was Leatherface. And
The mother of all masks.
the mother of all masks, absolutely. I'll ask each of you could maybe start with Marilyn. What kind of films do you see today, Marilyn, that are being made that share the same philosophy aesthetically, creatively, organically? You know, what are the TCMs of today that you're seeing that remind you, or that share that special something with Texas Chainsaw?
Oh my goodness, what are the TCMs of today? I don't think
Yeah.
there are any, because
I was hoping you'd say that.
when I asked my niece what she thought of my TCM, she said, oh, it was just so slow. She wanted the MTV on drugs. So, then they're the ones of today. Now, I think Nightmare on Elm Street was scary at the beginning when don't go to sleep, because I'd try and turn them on, and then I have to turn them off or I wouldn't go to sleep. I'd be under my bed looking at the lights, checking the doors. As far as the Saw, don't, cut off your foot. My brother had that on. I said, turn it off. He says, you gotta watch this, Meryl. It's just like your movie. And I could hear the guy's gonna cut off. Never mind, I couldn't see that, because if I can't watch CSI when they're cutting into the body, and I have to turn my head, do you think I'm gonna know? So actually, after you tell me about it, maybe I can. The Exorcist, I saw it 7 times before I saw the Mercedes McCambridge playing Satan, going, your mother does something in hell.
Well, I think, I agree. I mean, I don't see anything that's the modern equivalent of Chainsaw. I think it's interesting, though, because I think in a lot of ways, people think they're doing the modern equivalent of Chainsaw. When they were doing, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, when they were doing the remake, the 2003, I got the phone call from the casting woman, the casting associate, as she called herself, to see if I would be in the movie. And the first thing this person says to me is, now, this time, it's a dark psychological horror movie, not a bloodbath like the original. And I said to her, did you ever see the original? Oh, yes, she says, and I think, no, you didn't, you little 18-year-old idiot. But, she was convinced they were making a dark psychological horror movie. When in fact, when you watch the movie, every time they have a chance to make it really horrifying and disturbing, they chicken out and splatter blood on you. The great example being when she finds her boyfriend hanging on the meat hook with his leg cut off, his toes are touching the keyboard. They could have made that scene excruciating because they're deathly afraid that Leatherface is going to show up. What if that scene had been 5, 6, 7 minutes long, and she's struggling to get him off the hook? And his toes are touching the piano, so they're making noise. I mean, the audience would have been, it would have been like the dinner scene. They would have been horrified because any second he's going to come. And then what they could have done was when she kills him, you could show his face when she kills him. But instead, she gives up immediately, guts him, a wound that would take him 2 days to die, and literally, it's a bloodbath. Literally, the blood covers her. Just a big bucket of blood splashes all over her. And I thought, do they really think this is dark? This is psychological horror? They chicken out. They didn't have the nerve to. I use other words, but it is Canada. They didn't have the nerve to show anything hard and really to grip the audience. So anyway, I don't.
Well, you're just all braver than I am. I'm not really into the really bad. The ones that I've gotten into lately are the Japanese horror films that they show on IFC. I love those because there's a lot of psychological horror in those. I don't know what the name of it was, where the girl was, she was getting revenge on some fellow, and she laid him out on the floor, and she was taking string and saw his
Audition.
toe off, and what was it?
Takeshi Miike's Audition, that's right. Yeah.
That's a good film, but it's tough to watch, you know. But it's really hard for me to watch even the chainsaws that were done afterwards. So I don't see it being repeated.
I say we open it up to the audience. Does somebody have a question?
Gunnar, is there ever any point where Leatherface had more dialogue?
No.
That was
Well,
just-
only in the sense that there is this, in the scene where the cook comes home and he's going, you know,
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that. In the original script, it's just in gibberish, and then Toby said, all right, this is what the lines mean. And so I did it as if I knew what I was saying, and he goes, it doesn't work, it's too much intelligence in the character. Just make it more like it's in the script where it's just gibberish. So I did that, that was it. And the only difference was, I tried, you know, I knew what this sentence means, and it's just these, you know, these like sort of strains of individual syllables. And I thought, well, if he's really trying to say, I put the girl in the freezer, he'd say, ba 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 big, you know, I mean, that's how close it was, you know, I mean, it was just nothing. And then he said, don't even do that, so that became ba 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 ba, you know, whatever he says, he doesn't say it, he's got that.
You can't remember the line.
I remember the line, but not in front of a mixed crowd.
Oh.
Well, it's interesting too, after Leatherface kills Pam, he goes to the window and checks out, what's anybody see, you know, did anybody see what's going on? And then he sits on the chair and he reflects almost, even though he's sort of mentally invalid, he feels guilty. There's a sense of guilt there, like he's wrong, you know, what have I done, and is it okay, and what's the family gonna think about it? Was that the intention for Toby to?
No, the intention is, where the hell are these people coming from?
Oh, okay. Well, my perception was a sense of remorse almost, or feeling bad about it. He was just tired. Anybody else?
I put up a struggle.
Oh, I have to tell you though, about the question about the lines.
Yeah.
One, you know, I hear all these myths about the movie, and one of the myths is, the reason Leatherface doesn't have any lines is that I couldn't act. And once they realized that, they cut all my lines. So there's the truth.
Yeah.
I can just disagree with you, because like your persona of that character, like whenever I saw the sequels, I know they're saying, well, you're just in a mask. No, it's your walk.
Well,
It's
no,
everything, the way you grabbed her, I mean, you actually create, without dialogue, through action, this very frightening, whacked character that, you know, you just can't get your head around. And, you know, like, is he kind of supposed to be mentally challenged? Is he inbred? Like, what's the deal? But you created that,
Well,
and the other guys were pathetic.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not that, I mean, it's just the idea that somebody, it was a critic who said, you know, they took his lines away because he couldn't act.
Oh, boy.
You know, and I just love that one. I love that one. That was right up with Marilyn's. I was actually a sensitive poet who was ruined psychologically by having to play this weird character.
Well, I might have said that, just to.
Oh, no, you told me that you'd heard that, and I thought, oh, really?
So Charlie Chaplin couldn't act in silent movies. Is that
Well, I mean, that's how preposterous this is.
yeah, that's what I mean. It's ridiculous.
Any,
How long did it take you guys to do the movie? Like, time
Everybody
frame?
remembers differently. I'm gonna go for 3 months. Anybody have a better shot?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Okay, well, it seemed like forever to me.
But I was released, well, not quite released, but anyway, basically I was done after 4 weeks. Then they shot for another 2 weeks. Then I had to come in and do a couple of pickup shots on the steps when he hands me the thing. But that's what I remember, because I think we started in, what was it, the end of July?
Well, I think it was earlier than that.
It was the middle of July to my birthday, because you may not know this, but in the film, it opens and it says on August 18, 1974. Remember that in the very beginning, and you think, wow, this was real. Well, that is actually my birthday, August 18th, which I didn't know that they had used that until I came out in 2008 and joined everybody going to these things, right? And I went to, you know, I thought, well, I better watch the film again. They say my scenes are good. You know? So I was watching the film from the very beginning, and I thought, oh my God, August 18th, how did they pick that date, you know? But that day that you see me sitting on the steps, that picture in Wikipedia, you know, that, and I'm looking so forlorn, I actually had to turn down 6 weeks of work, and I hadn't worked in 6 weeks. I had to quit my job because I was doing a play at night and doing that in the day. Broke. And of course they had deferred all of our money after 2 weeks, so I was really just,
But they were paying you the big bucks.
Oh, I know. So that's what that look on the steps when you see me sitting there is, you know, she just happened, we weren't shooting anything at that moment. Sally, what was Sally's name? Richardson just happened to walk by and she said, Terry, you know. So.
Anybody else?
What was the longest or worst scene to film?
Well, it's the 26-hour day, also known to some as the 27-hour day. We can't agree.
Or some is the 28 and 29,
Yeah.
maybe 3 days.
We started, it was the dinner scene. John Dugan, Grandpa, they had made that face for him, and it was an appliance. It took, I think, 6 or 8 hours to put on, and they had made 3 faces. They were planning to shoot for 3 days, and when they got the face on, he said, "All right, you're going to shoot me out today because I'm not doing this again." So we shot for 26 hours, and all of that stuff with Marilyn scream. Well, not screaming, because you had to come back later, didn't you, and scream for another day.
We did do the most of the screaming on the set, then I did scream. And they'd keep calling back to scream or shoot my eyes, you know, the eye shots. So, but a lot of the screaming was actually caught at the dinner sequence. But they'd always keep doing mid-out sounds, just go ahead and scream a little more.
Yeah.
We
And
couldn't get enough.
oh, and the thing was, it was so hot. It was 100 degrees anyway, and then we were inside with heavy blankets on the windows, a lot of light in there. We had 2 10Ks and a 20K, and a bunch of smaller lights, and no air moving through because of the blankets over the windows. So I bet it was 100.
Rotting food.
And rotting food. I bet it was 120. Yeah, and then they were switching out the head cheese, you know, because it was going bad so fast. But we had dead chicken. It was a prop, a dead chicken, and there was only one dead chicken. And then of course there was me. You know, I smelled the worst because I'd been shooting at that point for 4 straight weeks, 12 to 16 hours a day, and they wouldn't wash my wardrobe because they were afraid they'd lose it or it'd change color. So when I'd get on set, you know, my clothes were standing in the corner. You know? That was the dinner scene where when we broke for lunch at like 3 in the morning.
We all went to
Well, they told me I wasn't allowed to get into the lunch line because I smelled so bad. It was going to be really sick. So I got the doctor. Dr. Barnes was on the set because he had designed the grandpa's face, and he gave me some nausea pills, and I went and lay down somewhere and pitied myself because of that. But
character,
yeah,
you know, getting the character.
that's right. And for me, that was the worst day. You know, and I would imagine.
Terry?
Oh, definitely the day I had to fight Gunnar all day. That was horrible. It was
Such a beast.
strong, very strong. You know, when I'm trying to move, I know somebody wrote on YouTube, "Oh, she's not even trying to get away." You know, I mean, I was doing everything I could to get away from him. And the problem really was that Toby, he'd have something that he wanted to shoot, and he'd shoot 32 takes on it. No kidding. Every one of them was a huge number. And the one, you may have read this, I've said it in interviews before, but that one where I go into the chicken room and I fall in, that was a galvanized bucket. And he said, well, just kind of stumble in. So I thought, oh, well, I'll kick the bucket up, you know, as I go in, I'll stumble over that. It was dark and it was feasible to me. So after I kicked the bucket, he liked that. He thought that was good, but he wanted to do it again and again. 13 times, and it cut my leg on the first take. But instead of like taping the bucket or putting some foam on the bucket or, you know, you kind of wondered if there wasn't some misogyny going.
Definitely fighting them.
Yeah.
I have to ask, how hard was it to push that wheelchair in that scene?
That was ridiculous. I wasn't yelling at Franklin. I was telling the director, I can't push him down, and I couldn't. He was heavy. There was trees and branches and wood and rocks, and they said, Sally just pushed him down that hill. Plus, Franklin was adding to it by going, Sally. And then, I don't know if I told anybody this, but it's important, everybody knows, Franklin was as despicable as you saw him on camera. And I told everybody what a despicable person he was for 20 years, and what a miserable, you can fill in the blanks. And 20 years later, we're at a convention for the first time, and Paul came up to me and said, Marilyn, I sure wish I could have been nice to you and Terry and Bill, but I didn't want to get out of character because then y'all would have liked me, and then maybe my character wouldn't work. And I said, Paul, I never got to know you. I've been telling everybody you've been all these years, and he was simply the most charming, loving, and great guy, and a terrific, stupid method actor that kept it to himself. So everyone will understand that Paul Partain was great. Franklin Hardesty deserved.
He should have died even more slowly. I really look forward to killing Paul. Because
We looked forward to it too.
partly because I just wanted to kill the guy, but also because I knew he was off the set. And I never hung around him at all. You know. There's a story about Paul which Bill Vail confirmed. Paul called everybody by their character name.
Yeah, so you just didn't really want to punch him when he
So they're sitting around waiting for a setup, and there's Paul sitting in his wheelchair as he always did, and Bill is there, Kirk, and there's a cooler right near, like 4 feet away, and Paul turns to Bill and says, Kirk, would you get me a Dr. Pepper? And Bill says, Paul, you can fucking walk. And Paul goes, oh yeah.
Imagine all day, Paul. So when you saw me rolling my eyes, I meant every moment of it. It was difficult.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, the first thing I want to say is the splatter, yes, they're never going to make another film that's going to be as good because of the fact that everybody's just throwing blood at the screen. But what I thought was excellent was the fact that it was really just predator and prey. It wasn't sexual in nature at all. It was just you guys, there was a hunter, a cook, and the nap-haired idiot. And that's what I thought really made the story resonate. It was just so good. My question, and I liked your answer about the whole thing with your dialogue, how it was just gibberish. Was it the same thing when Franklin was downstairs in the family house and everybody was upstairs? To me, it doesn't sound like there's any dialogue going on up there. It was just basically maybe Toby saying, be up there laughing like you're having like this great time. Was there any dialogue?
Yeah. It was improvisation. And what was happening is we were laughing. And Alan, Jerry, my boyfriend in the Dang Chainsaw, we're playing around. So I'm making dumb, stupid remarks about my grandma's wallpaper. And Jerry, Alan, who's a smart
Ass.
just says, what? What about your grandma? And I'm looking at him like, what are you doing to me? I'm so caught off guard, but we keep rolling. So, the more ridiculous it got, the more we were laughing. But what made it work was because there was just real idiots upstairs is what we should have called that scene. The idiots upstairs and the dumps downstairs, and that made the scene where Franklin's going, it's spitting even better. Sorry about it.
Oh, that mouth work was all Paul, by the way. All those raspberries, I think that was all Paul was doing. I don't think that was.
That wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
Only Paul could come up with glow forever. And why more?
Actually, I don't have a question, I have a comment. That's actually the first time I've ever seen that movie from beginning to end. I've seen the remake, but that's the first time I've ever seen it. My wife is a fan of it. My comment is the acting was way better than it was really good. The acting, like the dialogue from the beginning, and even in the van, was excellent. And I'm shocked of how good the acting was. So kudos to you guys.
And thank you, sir.
I was the dialogue coach.
Anybody else? Shannon?
I have two questions. First, I wanted to know how they supported you in the meat hook scene. And the second question I have, do you all have children, and how do they feel if you do have children?
I have no children, never married. So some people would say, oh, too bad, but I'm okay about it. As far as the way that came about, Dottie Pearl was our makeup woman. She was married to Daniel Pearl, our cinematographer, DP. And she was trying to come up with Bob Burns a way to do this. And the night that I left the set to come back the next day to film it, had no idea. I came back to the set the next morning and I saw what they had come up with. And it was really grotesque. It was parachute strapping in the form of a chastity belt with foam in the crotch area, like about that thick. And attached to the back of the thing was more parachute strapping that came up with the steel hook. So when we're shooting it, you know, got that tiny costume, so they had to figure out a way to keep that up. And so they took pantyhose, women's pantyhose, and pinned it underneath, stretched, you know, twisted and stretched underneath those thin straps that came up. You never saw it, right? And then Gunnar was, when he hoists me onto the meat hook, you see Toby was below and they were spotting me. Gunnar puts me up toward it, and then when he's gonna drop me, then it's another take, and Toby was beneath spotting me because obviously they don't wanna really drop me on the hook, but they wanted that hook, that loop, whatever ring, to go on the hook instead of my back. And so the way that it's so brilliant is the way that it's cut, because you see the bare back coming up toward the hook, and then suddenly they've got a front shot, you know, where he drops me. And I got to the set that morning, and Toby said, well, Terry, what did you have in mind? You know, what do you think you'll do on the meat hook? I said, well, you know, I've thought about that a lot, because I had no real idea. And then I said, well, if it doesn't get me in a strategic point, I think my instinct would be to try and get off that hook. So that's what we did. And he said, yeah, okay, so let's try it. Toby always smoked a little cigar, that's what that is. So that's what we did, right? You see that one?
Thanks.
Oh, I was curious, how old were you at that time?
I'll read all of it.
I turned 21 on the day when you see that picture. 21, that was 73, 22, sorry, 22, because I was born in 51, that was 73, so it was 22 I was, sorry, on that day. I shave a year off, you know.
I was 15. I was 26.
Well, I used to tell everybody I was 12, but people started believing me, and then I felt a little guilty. I was like, where's your head, buddy? You're thinking this girl's 12. I was 24.
Yeah.
Just ask, what city was that house located in? The house with all the killings?
It was in Williamson County, so it was directly north of Austin, between Austin and Round Rock, Texas. Just in the middle of nowhere on Quake Hill Road, which I thought was a great name to do a bunch of killings on Quake Hill Road.
It's pretty
Quick
inhabited now, though,
No, I just recently found out that it's up for sale.
Really?
Well, no, the building's been moved. It's in Kingsland, Texas, 7
Oh.
miles west.
Oh, okay. And wasn't it a bed and breakfast or something?
It was a, bed and breakfast restaurant.
Well, it's moved, yeah, it was next to a bed and breakfast. It was all part of the same complex, and then it was
Yeah.
turned into a restaurant.
Oh, okay.
But I
this-
mean that
This, the site has been turned into, there's a highway that goes through there and a big industrial park.
Oh, okay.
So they have to move again?
No, that's, I mean, in the original filming site, that's what's there.
okay.
And then they moved it to Kingsland.
Yeah, the house is great.
Yeah.
They've all been there. They had a filming, a screening where they were all, I was in California, so I couldn't be there, but they, Ed and Marilyn and Gunnar
Alan.
and Alan.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah.
We always get together and have these little picnics every now and then, like here, in Canada, what do you know? A good picnic.
Hey,
And we'll be having a good picnic tonight, guys.
Yeah, we had a great party tonight. I hope you're all gonna be there. You gonna be there, everybody, or?
just remember that real Texas chili doesn't have any beans.
Oh, we were having an argument about that before, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a picnic.
I understand there's going to be a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. You guys want to talk about that a little bit?
TCM 3D.
Marilyn and I are in it, and John Dugan, who was Grandpa, is in it, and
Jerry will be in it too.
yes, yeah. But we filmed it in July and August in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was just like being back on the old set. It was 104 on my first day on the set and 108 on my last day. So I don't know how it was when you were there, because
I think it
we
was
overlapped a
worse.
little bit.
It was, I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh, wait a minute, something happened that was just like, oh, I know, oh. Something happened on the set that reminded me just like the old days, but due to the nature of the, Marilyn can't tell anything. I won't be able to tell until the movie comes out, but we did have an adventure as they were taking us back from one scene place to, back to location. The van all of a sudden broke out and broke down, and then this deputy sheriff comes behind us in Louisiana, and I'm with a bunch of, they look like, what did they look like? Will you explain what Bear looked like?
Oh, Bear.
I mean, I'm afraid I'm gonna get arrested in Louisiana on this
Well,
little
no,
side road
they look
in
just-
this junkie van.
They look just like locals. Bear was like 5'10", 380 pounds. He wore bib overalls and a very sweaty orange t-shirt and a lot of hair all over the place.
And he's at the back of the van, opening the van up, telling the police, well, it's all right, officer, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my Lord, and in Louisiana, and this
But then the cop pulls
Bear.
over and goes, hey, it's you guys.
Hey, Bear.
Yeah, hey, Bear, that's
But it wasn't, and I'm saving our fathers in the meantime. I don't wanna be on no highway road with weird cops or Bear.
But and Bear made it into the movie.
Yeah,
Cool.
so you'll see him too.
Yeah, he's in the movie.
He's good too, good guy. He
Okay.
said, you never
Okay,
sure what
good.
the cops are gonna think. Or if he does have some cocaine stashed under that.
That's the director.
Oh, that's right.
But I mean, we can say this is a sequel. This is a true sequel to the original. It starts up right after the original ends. So it picks right up there, and obviously Marilyn and I don't play our original characters, but we're not allowed to say anything until the movie comes out.
No,
more
we're
than
kinda,
that.
I'm afraid the police would come in here, or somebody would. I
The
get
movie
that.
police.
Somebody-
But I mean,
the mafia would come in here.
I had to do some sound work on it a couple of weeks ago, where they sent the recording people where I was, some quick time files, just so that I could match the sound to the line, to the scene. And it's the first time I'd seen anything of it. I thought, wow, this movie looks really good, so I have hope for it.
Oh, you mean I might get to see myself, or when well, mine won't be the same.
You won't be on the cutting room floor after all. But, I mean, I was real excited to see it, I just saw like 3 minutes of it, but I was real pleased because it looks great.
Let's keep our fingers crossed, because
Yeah.
I'd like to see this one go be good.
But the trouble is you never know. You do what you can do and you do your best, but you just never know until the film's in the theater, and it's up on the screen.
And if anyone likes it, because you can think it's terrific. There've been so many times I thought, it's so terrific, and 80 times titles later, it's still not selling it.
This could be terrific. This
Yeah.
could have been terrific.
Or it should have been terrific.
Is there a website or anything like that so anybody can take a look? And
You can go to Leatherface 3D, it'll give you a brief summary of what they're doing, and check whenever something new is posted. I think the more they get closer to D-Day, they're talking about us doing more promotional stuff and whatever, but we won't know until.
Great.
They were very adamant about being very careful.
Yeah, I stupidly tried to, I did try and just send some innocent little copies of something to a friend, just a quick read that wasn't gonna tell anybody. They went, everything's watermarked and federal stamped and prohibited, and will wreck your computer if you even try that again,
I was doing a thing in Canada last year, in fact, up in a little town, Tattagouche, in Nova Scotia.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a little afternoon thing, and that was a Q&A, and somebody asked me, and I made some very small, simple statement. And within a week, on Bloody Disgusting,
.com.
yeah, they have a big headline, Gunnar Hansen spills the beans.
Yeah.
And
it's not
and I
funny
thought,
though.
but I never said anything. That's the part. I never said anything. But somebody posted it on YouTube, and then they pretend to quote it, and then you could go to the link and see. But I never said anything. But they were adamant, because, and I think part of that was that Bloody Disgusting was covering their ass because they were leaking information about the movie before it was being shot.
Because they were allowed to be there on location taking interviews. And so they were also serving. They weren't just interviewing, they were kind of going off to go to the bathroom and then watching stuff and then.
All right, it sounds like they had an agenda. Anybody else? Question? Yeah.
It's been a while since the first one was made. Do you ever watch the original and see something you would have changed if you had the chance, like aside from a remake, like a scene that you would speed up or slow down, or a take you could have redone?
After 38 years, I'm really proud of it. I wouldn't touch a hair on the little buddy's head. That baby is so perfect. It's existing, and it's being recognized today. There ain't nothing I would do. Absolutely
I
not.
do a make-out scene with Pam and Kirk.
Bill said the same thing.
I know.
He said, what I don't like about that movie is, Pam and I should have had something going on. It's like we've been married 20 years. In the movie, we should have been like making out.
Well, we actually, Toby was busy. They were all busy with things. So Bill and I spent a lot of time figuring out what we would, the script was not really clear about our characters. So we decided we would form them ourselves, and we decided we were basically married, but that we hadn't, talked about it with everybody else. And so what's really funny is that I got asked, well, whatever happened to Pam? And everybody kept saying Pam had died. And I finally started thinking about it. I said, no, Pam did not die. She crawled out of that freezer while Sally was getting dinnered, and she got out the back and got away, and I wrote a whole blog on the whole thing. And I said that she stayed in hiding. Her last name was full of hooey, Pam full of hooey. But I still think they should have had a really good make-out scene.
Did she have Kirk's love child?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Pam was actually PG when she was on the hook. And so I had a little, one of those Ann Geddes babies that's in a rose, all curled up, and I said, that was a little Kirk Jr.
Okay, so this is asking you to go way back, but Franklin's knife. Was there ever a scene where he found it or it became important? No?
Oh, no, that's a good question.
That is.
No, it never, that was never, there was never anything else said
It,
about
it
that.
always bothers me because he's like, he just needs the knife.
Well, it's like a setup for,
Scene where he found it and then gets cut in half.
well, you know, Chekhov said that if there's a gun on the mantle
Yeah.
in the first act, somebody better fire that gun in the third act.
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is always the reverse, because when you read cheap horror movie scripts, the problem is people stick stuff in to solve a problem too late. And my feeling is if someone fires that gun in the third act, you better see it in the first act,
Yeah.
because that's really what happens usually. But in that case, I agree, it's like there's a setup there and nothing comes with the setup. I'd like to have that knife.
I like one of those red shorts. You sell them on